Greetings and salutations, folks. I hope everybody is still doing well. Welcome to this night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump on into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this night-ending bonus upload, shall we? Today's first encounter. I encountered a reptilian of some sort a few years ago while attending college in Oregon. This individual is extremely manipulative with words and dangerous with its deeds. Once I told him he was a cold-blooded bastard after he humiliated a friend. He became very angry, staring at me with this hideous glare. He said I'd suffer for my disrespect. That night, while studying in my dorm room, I was alarmed by a shadowy figure starting to manifest. I am sensitive to energy, so I immediately started to raise the vibration in the room. It quickly dissipated. That startled me, so I was at full alert. Later that night, at approximately 2 a.m, I awoke from what I thought was a dream, but alarmed by a grotesque reptilian form on top of my body, attempting to choke me. It screeched and wailed like it was taking great delight in my fear and pain. I struggled and finally threw the thing off of me. As it cowered on the floor glaring at me, I immediately knew it was the individual I had insulted earlier. It thrust itself at me. I reached for my pants on my desk chair in order to retrieve my pocket knife. It was choking me as I pulled the weapon from my pants pocket and told it to open the blade. I was able to push it off long enough to slash it across its left arm and upper chest. With a howl of rage, it ran to the wall and disappeared through it. I turned the light on and fully illuminated the room and noticed blood on the knife, bed sheets, and floor. I checked myself to make sure it wasn't my blood. I was awake the rest of the night and ready to strike if I needed to defend myself. I was exhausted in the morning, but made my way to class. I noticed the individual coming out of his dorm room. He had a bandage on his left arm, in the same spot where I had cut the reptilian. He noticed me and walked directly to me, nose to nose. He glared at me with those evil reptilian eyes. "Watch your back, because this isn't over," he murmured. I walked past him and made my way to class. Later that day, the dorm staff and housing administrators wanted to talk to me. While I talked to one of the dorm staff regarding this individual, the administrator blurted out, "Don't provoke him. It's important that you not cause trouble for him." The dorm staff was obviously terrified of this guy and behaved like his minions. This was startling. That same night I felt weary of a presence watching me. The sense of dread continued for several weeks until I moved off campus to avoid this hostile individual. However, I often noticed him and his acquaintance blatantly watching me when I'm on campus and in town. I know that I wasn't the only person affected by this guy, but no one ever dared to discuss it. Many strange things happened as well, including the sudden death of 2 students in the same dorm. No details of those deaths were ever disclosed, just that they had died for medical reasons. I know others are out there who are aware of the Reptilians, and that there are ways that humanity can use to defend itself against them. I have been fortunate to meet several people who safeguarded themselves and the families. These terrible beings are the scourge that will continue to confront us. Please be safe. Today's second part of the upload. Hello, I'd like to tell you about an experience I had in 1954 while working in the U.S. Naval Engineers at the Zaragoza Air Force Base near Zaragoza, Spain. This was to be a refurbished NATO facility. I was a contractor, 24 years old, and working my father's construction firm, and hired by the DoD. This was the first time away from the United States. I had another fellow with me who had worked for my father for a couple of years. Only a few people knew of my experience. My wife, who is deceased, and 2 close friends who have also passed. I've read some stories from other people. I thought that I could add my story to the record. After I had been in Spain for several weeks, I decided to take in the surroundings. I was told by some of the locals that a Monastero de Pedrado near Navoloso would be an excellent place to visit. The monastery was about 60 miles away, so I decided it would be an enjoyable trip. When I arrived, I met a young lady who offered to show me the complex. It was a very hot day, early August, so we took numerous breaks along the way. As the afternoon waned and early evening approached, it was time for me to head back towards Zaragoza. The young lady mentioned that there was a very nice inn not far from the monastery if I wanted to stay the night. Then get an early start in the morning, so I decided to stay the night. Maybe do some exploring that evening. The inn was very rustic, though quite comfortable. I had dinner outside on the back patio. It was an excellent evening. Though it was dusk, I could still see the terrain not far from the inn. There was a vineyard and a small lavender meadow behind the inn, which led to a series of rocky outcrops. I thought that I would take a look around, but I first asked the owner if it was okay to do so. I walked through the vineyard and reached a small pond, which had a large chorus of frogs. By this time it was dark, but there was a fair amount of available moonlight. But I still needed a flashlight to see where I was going. I walked around the pond and started to cross a small bridge over a narrow stream. As I walked over the bridge, I noticed something run through the water, about 50 feet upstream. There was enough moonlight to where I could make out upright shape. This thing was heading toward the high rocks, though I lost sight of it. I stood silent for about 5 minutes. It was eerie because the frogs were now quiet. The only sound was coming from the direction of the rocks, and the noise was very strange. It sounded like a guttural yak, yak, yak series that would pause for a few seconds, then repeat. It would also fade in and out. After a few moments, it stopped. I had no idea what it was. I crossed the bridge and started to slowly approach the rocks. As I came to a rock face, there was a fairly well-worn trail on the ground along the edge. I walked further until I reached an opening in the rock face. I pointed the flashlight inside and saw that there was a grotto about 15 feet deep and high enough for me to stand in. The floor of the grotto was littered with small animal bones, so I figured that there were predators about, mostly fox. I continued on the trail until I heard that yak, yak, yak sound again, and it was very close. I instantly stopped walking and started searching around me with the flashlight. Just then, some gravel landed on me, and a loud yak, yak, yak sound was coming from above me. I quickly looked up and pointed the flashlight. There was a creature standing on a small ledge, about 15 feet away, staring at me with yellow eyes reflecting back. It was screaming yak, yak, yak in quick, constant rhythm. This was the most ghastly thing I had ever seen. It was standing on two legs. It was about 4 or 5 feet tall. I've read about reptilian encounters. Well, I think this may have been one. It was dark in color and had arms like a human. The face looked like a lizard, resembling that of an iguana. After a few seconds, it leaped off the ledge onto the trail, swiftly running on two legs in an opposite direction. It was then that I noticed the long tail was moving away from me. I quickly made my way back to the inn and directly into my room. I lied on the bed thinking about the creature all night. I was terrified to look out my window, fearing that it had followed me back to the inn. Early in the morning, I checked out and drove back to Zaragoza. I have no proof of my experience other than my word, but I now believe that was a reptilian creature. Today's third encounter. I grew up in a former coal mining town in north of England. To give a little more background, this town was located between the cities of Newcastle upon Tyne and Durham. This area had had its share of UFO activity. This story goes back to when I was 9 years old, back in 1997. At that time, I used to help my mother babysit my newborn cousin who lived on the same street. On this particular occasion, a Saturday night, my brother had decided to come as well. He was 8 years old at the time. It was a normal evening, nothing out of the ordinary. My mother put the baby to bed around 8, and we started watching a movie. My father called to tell me that my mother had forgotten something in the house and asked me to go pick it up. I left, then decided to stay with my dad for an hour before going back. Then the phone rang. I answered it as I was closest, and it was my mother who was concerned about my brother who was freaking out. I passed the phone to my dad, and he said we would come get him. As we arrived, we found my brother on the couch, all white and crying of fear. My dad asked him why and what had happened, but he could only speak gibberish. However, he was able to say, "I never want to stay in this house again. I want to go home." My brother and I shared a room, and I still remember him crying all night. Needless to say, it was a sleepless night for the whole family. My brother never talked about what happened, and true to his word, he never slept at my aunt's house again. Several years later, when my brother was 16, he decided to open up about what had happened that night. We were alone in the house while my parents were on holiday. I asked, and he paused his computer game and stared at the screen and said, "Mom sent me to check on our baby cousin, so I went upstairs. I didn't turn the light on as the living room light was enough, and I went into the baby's room. Everything seemed normal at first. Then I felt it, a strange presence as if something was behind me. It wasn't a feeling that something was there, but rather an unknown certainty. A heavy breathing sound started, and at first I thought it was the baby snoring. But it was too heavy, sort of like Darth Vader, but more aggressive. I turned to the door slowly and saw a figure. It was dark, but I could tell that its skin was green on the right side. What scared me the most was its glaring red eyes that just stared at me. I hid behind the door, thinking I was going to die. It just stood there staring at me through the crack of the door, its head turning to keep track of me with its red eyes. Those red eyes just staring at me. It seemed to stay there for about 20 minutes, and I did not move as I thought it would hurt me. Then it just disappeared. I think it may have opened the window and jumped out. I only realized it was gone when the heavy breathing stopped and the feeling of terror disappeared. Though my brother says it was about 20 minutes, it was only about 1 or 2. I have to admit his story is very unsettling, and I imagine that people would think it was made up. It's quite a lot for a 9-year-old to remember. But he claims as he got older he was able to describe it better, as this night has always been on his mind. My aunt was never told the story, but one day I asked her if she had ever seen or heard anything strange in the house, to which she replied, "Once, when your brother was a toddler. He fell down the stairs. When we asked him if he was okay, he replied that the man with red eyes had done it. Although he was very young, he remembers it clearly to this day. He recalls looking back up the stairs to see a figure standing there, just staring at him with glowing red eyes. So it seems it wasn't the first time he had encountered this thing." My brother also claims to have had dreams about this ever since the babysitting incident. One day, one dream in particular, was that he was playing with our Labrador in my mother's room. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a figure walk past the door in the dark. The dog went crazy, snarling and barking, with all of its hair standing on end, like a dog does when it tries to make itself look bigger and under threat. But looking out into the darkness to see what the dog was barking at, there they were, those staring red eyes. For years we have tried to make sense of it, doing a lot of internet research, asking questions in forums, but have never came to any conclusions to what it is. I understand this is a lot to read, but maybe someone after all these years can shed some light on the whole thing. Today's fourth encounter. It was fall of 1998. I suddenly found myself separated from my husband and with 2 preteen children to support. Living in a small Kansas town, there was very limited employment options. I needed to remain close to home to attempt to keep a handle on the preteen adolescents and still keep a roof over our heads. It was convenient when I saw an ad for workers at our local Walmart. The store was converting to a superstore and needed staff 24/7, so I applied. I got hired as a department manager. I got dug in and laid out the department and everything on the shelves on the day of the opening, including the shelves themselves, was put there by my hands. The new store opened and school had started, so I tried to keep my hours mostly accommodating that. But weekend work was mandatory. Usually, I got to work early. There was only light register staff, and I'd be the first department manager on the floor. It was early days for the new store, but the majority of the setup crew was departing the job site. One morning I arrived even earlier than usual. I had time in and was about to leave the freight room when a young boy, about the age of my own kids, rushed past me, nearly knocking me over. He started sputtering something about how his ID had been lost and he had to see the CCTV to see who picked it up. The first thing weird about this is that I didn't know this kid. Many of my kids grew up in this town, and being a small town, I thought I knew all the kids from the town. The second weird thing is back in '98, it would be very unusual for any small town preteen to have ID of any kind. I told him I knew nothing about it, but he could follow me back to the office to inquire. There was only one lady in the back office. She was a member of the setup team. She had been responsible for hiring me. I left him with her after a short explanation and went out to the floor to begin my shift. But I forgot my scanner, so I turned heel and went back to the office area to get one. Immediately, I could hear this kid becoming very aggressive with the coworker. He was ranting on, insisting he view the CCTV tape. The human resource officer was trying to calmly explain to him that only security staff and the store manager could view it, and she would pass on his concern. Worried about my coworker's safety, I crept closer to the door, which remained opening. His back was to me, but I looked past him and I could clearly see her whitened, shocked face. The boy, sensing my presence, swung around and stormed past me, I assume, flew out of the building. "Did you see his eyes? Did you see his eyes?" she exclaimed. Though, in fact, I said nothing. I think I was basically gobsmacked, and as it turned out, I never spoke to her again. That was the last time I ever saw her. When I inquired after her, I was told she was transferred, though other whispers she had been fired by the home office. The third weird thing was, look into the eye of a snake and you know what that boy's eyes were like. Today's fifth encounter. I'm sharing this for my friend who now wears a bulletproof vest and carries a gun on a daily because of this encounter. He said there was 8-foot-tall creatures resembling reptilian type surrounding his home one night. They got into his head and communicated strange things like the end of civilization and stuff, and that only a small group would survive. Sometimes they got physical, and then there was a loss of consciousness. They mimic his voice when he yells out into the woods at them. It starts off sounding strange, but they repeat it over and over until they finally get it exactly right, until it gives them the chills and goosebumps. He shoots at them, and then a light smacks the bullets out of the air. When the light hits the bullets, it makes a loud slapping noise. He finds the bullets in the yard in the morning. Some bullets are perfectly shaped, and some are flat, like they have been run over by a train. Since the guns and bullets don't work, he tried using a knife. He was able to stab one, and it yelled. He used a bear trap once. It snapped shut, and the thing was screaming. The trap was gone in the morning. There was so much more to this story that I don't know and can't remember, but he wants some help. They don't seem to be able to come into the house for some reason. Humans might be working with them as well. At this same time that incidences were taking place, someone shot his dog. The dog was placed in a box and left on his front porch with a sign that said, "Don't forget." Sounds like the Mothman prophecy stuff to me, right? Strange. The only way he sees himself actually being able to kill one of these creatures is by stabbing it while it's dragging you away, and hopefully it bleeds out before it takes you to where it wants to go. Today's final encounter. I'm First Nation person Cree from a reservation in Canada. I grew up in different reserves with different family members. We all have a common factor. If something of another being is bugging you, then someone is inviting it. We believe this is negative outlets. This happened when I was 7 years old. My sister and I were visiting at our Nocam in Nimisam's house. The adults decided to go out to bingo, and they got their eldest cousin there to babysit everyone. His name was Corey. He was 16. My grandparents' home has a few trees around their house that they planted, and outside of that is a straight field for the next mile. We were outside all day. My cousin Corey was sitting on the patio as we were all jumping on the trampoline, and he was watching us. I went inside, and when I got back out, I jumped up on the edge of the patio to jump off onto the trampoline. My sister, who was 5, and my other cousin, who was 5, were already on the trampoline, stood in my way. I was telling them to move as I was about to jump, but they were completely fixated on the field, so I looked toward the field. There was 2 things coming toward the area in the field. The field was about a mile long, but you could see 2 huge black things, like hopping, coming down the field. They came up and down like a snake taking a peek, in perfect unison together. I called Corey and pointed toward the field. He told us all to get inside of the house and to lock up, as he didn't know what they were. We did as we were told. I don't remember much after going in, but it was like I just came to and was crying. My sister was beside me crying, and my cousin, who was also 11 at the time, was crying, holding my little cousin Cass. I got up and go to the front door, and Corey is running back in. He said they were circling the house. He tried to run across to the neighbor's house. The phone had stopped working, and it was just us kids home. I went back to the couch to sit with my sister so I could comfort her. When I got to her, she said, "Look out the window," so I did. Those things were looking in. They had their hands against the window as they peeked in. They looked like crocodiles, but shaped like humans. Their face was not as long as a crocodile. They had 5 fingers, but they were not human fingers. They had long nails with crocodile-like skin, and walked standing upright. They wore long black cloaks, or something on themselves. They stood at the window for only seconds and took off. Not long later, our grandparents got home with my uncle. We all went running to them crying, telling them what happened. My grandparents were very traditional and told us they had to leave and they needed us to go to my aunt's on another reservation. My aunt came to get us not long later. My uncle was upset. He drove around the field looking for whatever it was. But when we all jumped into my aunt's retro van to go home, those things were behind Nemosans. Then they ran south. I always thought that was a dream, but then, at one family gathering, I mentioned it to everyone who I recall was there, and they all remembered it.
There you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this night-ending bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.